The UFC 264 Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor 3. This is the rematch of the rematch, definitely one of the biggest pay-per-view events for the year, and we are very excited to call this one. This is another UFC prediction and analysis video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by the name of Zan, I go by the name of Harris, and here at Boxing MMA Picks, we are here to give you our fight-by-fight UFC breakdown, fight-by-fight UFC analysis, specifically from the Vegas perspective. That is the betting perspective, letting you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you perhaps want to stay away from, maybe ones that are overvalued. We'll even let you know which underdogs you perhaps want to take a shot at. And if you stick around to the end of the video, you might even get a little bit of parlay action as well. Now, of course, we're hoping that you watched our prelim video already. If you haven't, press pause, go ahead and watch that, and then return back to this video. If you have, that's great. We, of course, are going to give you our main card predictions now. We had 8 fights on the prelims. We have 5 fights on this pay-per-view main card. So we are going to get started with fight number 1. We have Sean O'Malley taking on Kris Moutinho. Moutinho is a replacement. Sean O'Malley was supposed to fight Luis Smolka on this one. And as a result, Sean O'Malley is now a super big favorite at minus 800. Nonetheless, I'll still give you a little bit of fight breakdown on this one. If we're looking at O'Malley, I mean, he returned to form. He had that round 3 TKO of Thomas Almeida. That was only a few months ago back in March. We know he's very good on the feet. Definitely got to respect his power. 8 of those 13 wins that you see there are by TKO. He has that southpaw stance. I know it indicates that he is a switch there. Of course, he will switch it up, but mainly southpaw. Has a lot of technique, very light on the feet, good distance control, fights from the outside. A lot of fakes and feints, real good timing, good counter puncher too. I don't really like his walk-offs. I mean, I think it worked early on in his career, but as he moves up the ranks, I really want him to finish fights rather than trying to go for the highlight reel walk-off win. We saw that versus Thomas Almeida. I think it was round 1, if I remember correctly. Hurt him, walked off. Herb Dean said, hey, keep going, fight's not over. And then, again, ended up getting the round 3 TKO. But had that gone the other way, he would have really hung his head based on not finishing the fight. So I really want to see him get into the habit of finishing fights. Kris Moutinho, UFC debut. He's filling in for Luis Smolka, like I mentioned. He actually just fought over a month ago. He won via arm triangle. That was May 2021. Southpaw on the feet as well. He actually has some similarities to Sean O'Malley in that, he'll use hands and feet. He'll mix it up. He has some pop in his hands, has good speed on the feet, pretty sound technically as well. But I'll keep it short. I mean, O'Malley's facing a version of himself that he's better than with no UFC experience. He's minus 800. He's going to get the job done here. I don't see how Moutinho wins this fight.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. And plus, O'Malley's a much bigger guy, right? So I think O'Malley's going to make some money here. I think he's going to make some money on this performance. Either performance or knockout of the night, whatever they give out nowadays. I think he's gonna put on a really good performance against Moutinho. I think he's just too big, and I think he's the better striker. So I'm not sure how Moutinho gets this one done, right? So I'm gonna go with O'Malley here. I wouldn't put this on any parlays. The odds are crazy, but he should definitely he should win this 98%. He should win this fight.
Agreed. Let's move on to fight number 2. This is a very interesting matchup in the women's bantamweight division. We have Irene Aldana taking on Yana Kunitskaya. I'm going to start with breaking down Aldana. She hasn't fought in a little while. November 2020, that was her last fight. She lost to Holly Holm. She is announced as a striker. Again, I like to pay attention to how these fighters are introduced. And she is introduced as a striker. So that sort of tells you the type of fighter that she is. A pretty tall fighter, good lateral movement around the octagon. She fights from a good distance. She fights from the outside with that long frame that she has. She won't have a reach advantage because Kunitskaya has a pretty decent reach there, but she will have the 3-inch height advantage. She's pretty light on her feet, has a decent jab. Again, Aldana I'm talking about here. has a decent calf kick, sneaky straight right hand that has a bit of pop on it. And again, you definitely got to respect her power. You saw how she was able to sleep Ketlen Vieira in their fight, and Ketlen was undefeated at the time. She did show a pretty good chin in that fight as well. And again, going back to her power, we look at her record: 12 wins, 6 losses. Of those 12 wins, 6 of them are via KO, TKO. And again, that's not something, I know these women are bantamweights, but that's just not something we see too actively in the women's division or in women's MMA, regardless of division. Has pretty decent striking defense. She has the IQ at the very least. She knows when to cover up, knows when to move her head, definitely willing to engage. And again, as decent as her striking defense is in terms of the IQ, she does get hit. So that's something that we want to pay attention to in this fight. If I'm looking at Yana Kunitskaya, she is on a 2-fight win streak. She also beat Ketlen Vieira. So Vieira, suffered a loss to both of these fighters here. That was in February, so not too long ago. Yana Kunitskaya, she has that Thai boxing style, a very strong clinch, really good underhooks, good knees in the clinch. She loves those Thai clinch situations. Look for her to use that very often. That's how she scores a lot of her points. She can definitely clinch against the cage as well. Again, good active knees to the body. And despite her 5'6" frame, she is physically strong. I don't know if it's her grip. I mean, she looks like a smaller fighter, but she is physically strong. Again, if you go back and watch that Ketlen Vieira fight, and we know Vieira to be a pretty big bantamweight, she shows some takedown defense improvements in that Vieira fight. Ketlen was able to get her down twice in the first round, so that was a bit of a problem. But she was able to get up immediately, at least the first time. Vieira was able to control her for a while with that second takedown, but from there, that was the only time she was able to take her down. And Kunitskaya, I really like how she puts her strikes together. I think she puts them together very well. I think she's very technically sound in her striking. This is a sneaky good matchup. I mean, you have 2 highly ranked bantamweights. I believe that Aldana is number 3, if I'm not mistaken. And Kunitskaya, I think she's sitting at number 6 right now. 2 good strikers that should keep the fight on the feet. And similar to our prelim video, again, if you haven't watched that, press pause, go ahead and watch that. I am going with the underdog. I was going to say I'm starting with the underdog, but this is not the first fight of the main card. But nonetheless, I'm actually going with the underdog on this one. Yana Kunitskaya, minor underdog here at plus 100. She really impressed me in that Ketlen Vieira fight with her ability to control her on the ground. Not to say I think she necessarily does that in this fight, but I think she has a bit more depth to her game. I think she can stay on the feet in different ways versus Aldana. And I think she has that clinch game that'll work to her advantage. And I think she has, again, that improved ground game should it go there. So Yana Kunitskaya, plus 100, she's going to be my pick.
That's fair. I don't blame you. But one thing to clear up, the height discrepancy with Kunitskaya. She's definitely not 5'6". If you actually, if the viewers just type in her name versus Ketlen Vieira weigh-in, go to images on Google, you'll see she's like probably an inch taller than Ketlen Vieira, who's 5'8". So in my opinion, Kunitskaya is at least 5'9". I don't know how they messed that up, because if you watch any of the weigh-ins versus all these fighters that she recently fought, what's that girl's name that she just fought? What's that? Let me tell you. One sec.
Stolarenko?
No, Marion Renault. She was towering over Marion Renault, and Marion Renault is 5'6". Like, she was like inches over Marion Renault. So that, because she's going to be the same size as, she should be the same size as Aldana. We're going to be surprised who's bigger, because they have Kunitskaya 100% incorrect. Just watch the weigh-ins and you'll see what I mean. But yeah, this is a tough fight because Kunitskaya has been showing some deadly grounding pound. She's showing some real good clinch work, holding fighters against the cage, Holly Holm style. And she's showing that she's stronger than most of these girls. And Aldana, that's her weakness is the grappling aspect. But I'm going Aldana. You know why? Because it's a women's fight. Anything can happen. I think she has the better stand-up. I think that she's a bit more fluid in the stand-up. She should win the striking, in my opinion. And I think she should have enough to keep it on the feet and avoid the ground. If she gets that taken down first round, I think as the fight goes on, she should be able to keep it on her feet. She's a vet. So I'm going to go with Aldana here to get this done here. I just think she's the better striking, and Kunitskaya does not have striking defense. I think she can get hurt here. So I'm going to go Aldana. But again, this is a woman's fight. I'm definitely not betting this fight.
Yeah, not mad at that at all. Again, that some of our betting bewares, this fits that woman's beware. So let's move on to fight number 3. We have a heavyweight matchup, Tuivasa taking on Greg Hardy. Why don't you break this one down as well?
Yeah, I think this is a real tough match here, because when you look at Greg Hardy, he's definitely improving each fight. Even in that Marston Topuria fight, he was looking good, and then the ground game came, and then he gassed out, and he was finished. Right, he was a fish out of water on the mat. So, I see this fight with Tuivasa staying on the feet. I think Tuivasa can take the shots. I don't think Tuivasa has a weak chin, so I think this fight can go 2-3 rounds. I think there's a good chance of that, unless Greg Hardy gasses out. I'm going to go with Greg Hardy for the only reason that I think he's the much quicker guy here in the ring. He's shown me some speed in that Topuria fight. I think this is a hard fight to call. I was on Tuivasa's side yesterday. Today I'm on Greg Hardy's side. So I'm definitely not betting this fight off that alone. But if I have to make a pick here, I'm going to go with Greg Hardy's athleticism here, his speed. But you got to be careful, because Tuivasa is now training with Daniel Cormier, and he looked really good. He's on a 2-fight streak with Cormier, right? And he looked really good in those last 2 fights. So it's hard for me to take Greg Hardy, but I just think for some reason here, I think he's gonna shine. I think that his athleticism, his speed, and I think that he's a natural athlete. He's a natural, he was in the NFL. So I think in little time, he's going to improve a lot more than a lot of these guys, just because of his athleticism. So I'm going to go Greg Hardy here. I think he's improving every fight, and I think that the speed's going to be a big factor here. I'm hoping he doesn't gas, but again, I wouldn't bet this fight.
Yeah, and from a pick perspective, I'm going to agree. Greg Hardy is going to be my pick as well, plus 115. So we're both going with the underdog. What I'll also say is that, to your point, that was one of the first things that I put in my notes, is that Greg Hardy, he is improving in every fight. He's getting more technical. He's becoming, a more diverse and a more complete fighter. He's big. We know he's one of the few heavyweight, not few, but we know he's, one of some heavyweights that actually cut weight to make the 266-pound limit. I think it was either in his last fight or maybe 2 fights ago, he almost missed weight for a heavyweight fight, again at 266, and that's pretty much unheard of. Whereas Tuivasa, obviously a bigger guy weighing in at 264, but he's kind of one of those guys where he's not really a threat to be overweight for the fight. And Greg Hardy is just going to physically be the bigger guy. That could play a role in this fight. I don't know exactly, right? But Tuivasa, to your point, 2-fight win streak. It's a tough matchup. I definitely see why he's the favorite here. Hardy could gas out. We've seen some holes in Greg Hardy's game. But this kind of reminds me of that fight 2 weeks ago. I think it was the Nzechukwu fight, where, again, different style of fighter. Obviously, Tuivasa is a lot different than Danilo Marquez. But when you're looking at a fighter who's improving in every fight, the UFC might just give him a little gift, maybe an early stoppage, maybe, whatever it may be, maybe a favorable decision. I think Greg Hardy is on that side of the UFC fence. And again, for those additional X factor reasons, I'm going with Greg Hardy on this one. So we're both going with the underdog. Why don't I move on then to fight number 4? This is actually our main event of the evening. We have Gilbert Burns taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And why don't you break this fight down first as well?
Okay, so one thing that sticks out when I see this fight is Thompson, 38 years old. He's going to be the taller fighter, the guy with the more reach, or he should have more reach. What's Burns' reach at?
71
Yeah,
75.
yeah. So he had a 4-inch reach on this guy. And when you look at Burns, when you look at a similar opponent to Wonder Boy, where was that? Didn't he fight Dan Hooker?
Who, Burns?
Yeah. He fought Dan Hooker in 2018. I think that's a similar fight to like Wonder Boy style, where Burns got upset and he was just rushing in and Wonder Boy countered him. And I think this is the same type of fight. When you look at Wonder Boy, he's hard to take down, and Burns doesn't have, like, he does have takedowns, but he doesn't have the best takedowns. Like he has one of the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC, but as far as like the offensive wrestling part, he doesn't really go for a lot of these takedowns. Like that he should be going for. So sorry there, but I'm gonna have to go with Wonder Boy here. I think he's a hard puzzle to figure out, and he's hard to take down because he has that distance. So he's so far away from you that when you shoot him for a takedown, he's already a step and a half away. So it's hard to really get in on his hips. And we look at certain guys that have fought him, guys like Vicente Luque, guys like Jorge Masvidal, Rory McDonald. These guys have takedowns. Like, these guys all have wrestling in their even Jeff Neal. These guys all have wrestling takedowns in their repertoire. And I agree Gilbert Burns is a higher level. He's a jiu-jitsu phenom. I agree with that 100%. But when you look at the fact that all these guys that take down other fighters, you would think if you fight Wonder Boy, the first thing you're going to look at is, how do I take this guy down? Wonder Boy won all of those fights. So I think it takes a serious wrestler to get Wonder Boy, or catching him like Pettis did, or winning a lucky decision like Woodley, right? So I think Wonder Boy's at this point that he can keep this on the feet. Definitely win a 3-round decision here. It's not going to take much cardio out of him. Even if he gets taken down in the first round, there's no way Burns is going to be able to keep this up second, third round. And I wouldn't be surprised Wonder Boy knocks him out, because, again, Burns is going to get upset because Wonder Boy is so elusive, and he's going to walk into a shot. So I really like Wonder Boy in this spot. This is probably one of my last times I'm going with Wonder Boy. He's getting too old, but Wonder Boy should get this done.
Yeah, and some commentary I'll add to that. I mean, we know Gilbert Burns is coming off of that loss in his title attempt to Kamaru Usman. You do wonder how he's going to perform coming off of that loss. I mean, Usman, he may have took the soul out of him a bit, right? Or maybe Gilbert Burns is going to come back with more fire. Is he going to be demoralized? Is he going to be more fired up? We don't necessarily know, and that could play an X factor in this fight. I definitely think another X factor that cannot go unnoticed, and I think I saw Stephen Thompson maybe tweet about this or say this in an interview or something like that. I think if Wonder Boy wins, you might think he's next in line for a title shot. Stephen Thompson was saying something to the effect of, we've seen all these guys against Usman already. I'm the only one that hasn't gotten my shot yet. So, if Stephen Thompson pulls this one together, you might think he's in line for a title shot. And at 38 years old, you got to think it's probably his last real effort. And again, I think that's definitely going to be an X factor in making sure that he stays very sharp for this fight. I think Wonder Boy has shown his value against these types of guys that have that come forward type of striking. I think about Jeff Neal. I think about Vicente Luque, to both fighters' points that you mentioned there. You could argue both guys have better striking than Burns, even though we know Burns' striking is really improved. And Stephen Thompson was able to handle them with that movement, with that distance control, and with that frustrating style. I expect Burns to try to pressure Thompson. I expect Thompson to use his movement around the ring very effectively. And to your point, again, our notes are very similar, or not notes because you don't make notes, you're just freestyling. Knowledgeable, obviously, but I have to put some notes down here.
Yeah.
I do expect Burns to get pieced up in a lot of moments in this fight. I potentially expect Burns to touch him a few times in this fight, but I don't think Burns will knock him out. I think Thompson will eat the shots well, the same way he did against Luque. I'm trying to remember if Neil landed really cleanly on him or not, but I know Luque did. And I know Thompson was able to eat those. And I think it's going to be kind of the same effect with this Gilbert Burns fight. So, Stephen Thompson, he's going to be my pick. I think you're looking at your next title contender in Wonder Boy. I like the odds here at minus 165. I'm going Wonder Boy all the way on this one. So let's move on to our main event of the evening. Again, the rematch of the rematch, the third fight in the trilogy. We have Dustin Poirier taking on Conor McGregor. I won't spend too much time on this. I mean, the last time we referenced a rematch between two fighters who fought not too long prior to their rematch, the rematch itself went very differently. I mean, we think Figueiredo versus Moreno, of course. This time around, obviously we have the Conor versus Poirier trilogy. You can't really help but still only really reference the previous fight that they had when you're analyzing this fight. In that fight that they had, Poirier versus McGregor 2, surprisingly, that was 6 months ago. I thought it was a much shorter time than that. But in that fight, the difference was the diversity. The calf kick from Poirier, the wrestling from Poirier, at least signs of it early in round one. You can tell Conor wasn't ready for that complete style of MMA. And something that really stood out to me leading up to this fight, being the third fight, I don't remember the exact quote. Someone put it in the comments, please. Conor said something to the effect of the first person to take the other person down is scum or something like that. And Poirier responded with like, hey, are you crazy? This is MMA. So that alone kind of tells me everything that I need to know about this fight in terms of expectations. Now, obviously anything can happen. We know Conor McGregor is going to be more prepared, but of course we know Poirier is going to be more prepared because Conor looked very good on the feet early in that fight, showing his striking advantages, obviously that we would expect him to have. I don't think it'll be as devastating as that second fight was, but essentially I'm still going with Dustin Poirier in this fight, and I have him winning using a lot of the same techniques as their second match. I think the kick is going to be there. I think wrestling attempts are going to be there. And unless McGregor really hurts Poirier, but Poirier has shown a really good chin, especially in a 5-round fight, I'm really liking Poirier's odds here, round 3, round 4, round 5, especially again, if he can get through that early onslaught the way he did in the second fight. So I'm going Dustin Poirier. I don't necessarily know if this goes to decision. I don't think it'll be as devastating as the second fight was, but I think Poirier is going to win very much for the same reasons as that second fight. So Poirier is my pick. I think about this fight 10 times, and most times I'm going to pick Poirier stylistically.
Yeah. This is a big fight because, rematches are a lot of times they're a lot different than the previous match, right? These guys can see what happened in the first fight and they definitely make adjustments, right? When I look at these two fighters, though, I look at Dustin Poirier. He hasn't lost a fight, and he's been really active in this period. Okay, he lost to Khabib. I'm sorry, but I don't think that counts. But he hasn't lost a fight aside from Khabib since 2017. So this guy's on a roll. And you look who's on his hit list. Like, look at the guys that he beat. Diego Ferreira. This guy beat Jim Miller, Eddie Alvarez, Anthony Pettis in 2017, Justin Gaethje. That's a really big win. Eddie Alvarez, Max Holloway, Dan Hooker, Conor McGregor. So that's a serious kill list. And when you look at Conor McGregor, you see Donald Cerrone, 2020, Eddie Alvarez, 2016, Nate Diaz. Jose Aldo was the biggest win on his record. That was a really good win at the time. Chad Mendes and Dustin Poirier. But that was 2014 Dustin Poirier and 2013 Max Holloway. If you really look at who Conor beat and when he beat them, it doesn't compare to what Dustin Poirier has done. I know people might think that Conor McGregor had he was at a really, really high level, and now he got so rich that he doesn't train as hard as he used to because he has all this money. I think Poirier reached a higher level than Conor's highest level in terms of ability, in terms of accomplishments in the octagon. Who he's fought. Poirier's fought the hardest guys. He has one of the hardest opposition lists in MMA, period. And I think this fight's going to be pretty similar to the second fight. I think the big difference with Poirier now is he comes out in the first round. He doesn't come out blazing. He doesn't come out trying to knock you out in the first round. He has changed in a sense that from his younger days. In the younger days, he went out and he'll knock you out if he gets that opening. He'll take the opening now, but he wants to take this into the second, third round. So when you see Dustin Poirier in that third round, late second, third round, he's on a different gear. And the other fighter is like coming down a gear and he's going up a gear. So I think his game plan of not blowing it out, and at this weight, he's a lot more durable. Hooker, hit him with the kitchen sink. Justin Gaethje, hit him with a baseball bat. Eddie Alvarez. Like, these guys whacked him. And this guy at this weight, he's much more thicker. He's much more sturdy. I agree Conor has that one-punch potential, but I don't think it's happening here. I think that you got to go Dustin Poirier. I think that he's especially at this time. This is Dustin Poirier's peak. Some fighters reach their peak 25, 26, 31, 30 is normally where they hit their peak, but everyone has their own peak. And Dustin Poirier is at his peak right now. And I don't think Conor is. So Dustin's my pick here. I'm pretty sure he gets this one done here. And he's motivated, right?
Definitely. And for the record, in the second fight, Poirier was the underdog. A lot of people were going with Conor McGregor on that one. But here at Boxing MMA Picks, we made that underdog pick for Poirier. And I mean, this time around, Poirier is the favorite. But Boxing MMA Picks, we are still both going with Dustin Poirier to get the job done here. So why don't we move on and take it to Vegas? Let's consider the entire card at this point, and let's talk about which underdogs we are considering.
Okay, Greg Hardy.
I like that.
And that guy, Yao Zhang Hu.
Two underdogs there. Okay. Greg Hardy at plus 110 and Yao Zhang Hu at plus 130. If I'm looking at a couple of underdogs, I'm also considering Yao Zhang Hu. And I know it's a women's fight, beware, but to that point, I'm going with Yana Kunitskaya. I think she has some advantages over Aldana in this fight. And at plus 100, I think she can get the job done. I am curious to see the height discrepancy of what she's listed at versus what she actually looks like. So I'm going to be paying close attention to that one. Now, in terms of just overall parlay, overall couple of picks that you really like, who are you taking a look at here?
All right, so I like Ilia Topuria. I like Michelle Pereira. I don't suggest you put Sean O'Malley, but that's free money. And I like Dustin Poirier. Actually, yeah, I like Dustin Poirier.
All right, so we have three. I'm gonna exclude Sean O'Malley just in case. He's not really adding too much value there as a fourth pick. But the three fights in that case would return plus 307, meaning $100 will return 407, and for our bigger bettors, $250 will return $1,017.69. If I'm taking a look at which parlay I'm considering, I am going Poirier all the way on this one. I also feel just as good about Wonderboy Thompson getting the job done here. And again, I really like Ilia Topuria at those minus 250 odds. And I think this is actually the same value on the parlay. Yes, it is plus 307. So again, $100 will return 407. And for our bigger bettors, 250 will return 1,017.69. So definitely some value to be provided on this card, some money to be made on this card as usual. We definitely appreciate if you guys subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the thumbs up, and participate in the comments. Let us know which fights you are considering. Let us know if you want additional breakdown for a specific parlay that you're considering. Let us know how you feel about some of our underdog picks. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And let us know how you feel about that main event. Is Conor going to get the job done, or is this going to be another win for Dustin Poirier? But in the meantime, we are going to sign out. This has been our main card predictions for UFC 264, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor 3. We are Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. Let's get this money.
Let's get it.